But I always say, if your app doesn't live on the first screen of a person's mobile device, then don't build an app. And the
Mm.
apps that live on the first screen of a person's mobile device, and what I term specifically the golden circle, or it's that section at the bottom where most of the finger activity goes.
Yeah.
What's up, builders? My name's Bobby.
And I'm Renier, and this is How Would You Build It, a podcast where we interview South African startup founders, business builders, and tech innovators.
And if you like our content, make sure to hit that subscribe, follow us for more, and we'll make sure to bring you the best interviews, unique insights to help you build better and stay ahead. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to How Would You Build It. This is another episode with a founder building something amazing from South Africa. Please welcome Jonathan Williams from Chatting. Jonathan, how are you doing?
Excellent, Renee. And thanks for having me on your podcast.
Awesome. I only learned about Chatting recently, and having looked at some of the work you guys have done and how long you've been doing it for, I was like, wow, WhatsApp has been going for some time, but people building apps on WhatsApp hasn't been that many years. But you guys have started quite some time ago. Like, maybe share a bit about your journey and how it led to you starting Chatting. And actually, before we get there, let's start with what is Chatting, and then you can take it a bit back and how you got to starting it.
Yeah, certainly, man. Look, we chat commerce platform, and chat commerce typically, there's a plethora of use cases and so forth. We started off with digital process automation using WhatsApp as a front end 9 years ago. And then we developed our own omni-channel platform, our own MarTech platform. And typically, especially large enterprise clients, they use all of these things together. They can use them individually, but they use them together for a seamless experience. And over the past 4 years, we've definitely shifted a lot to the marketing, outbound and inbound marketing, using social channels more effectively. And we've seen amazing successes.
Awesome. And your journey leading up to starting Chatting, I know you've got some background even in corporate. Like, how did someone coming from corporate end up in doing what you're doing now?
So yeah, it's actually I've always wanted to start something. 2000, it was 2009. I had something going. It was a project-based selling hours and those kinds of things, consultancy. And what I learned from that is I never want to sell hours. So I always said my next business has got to be a recurring revenue business, which this one is. So fast forward to about 2015, I was about mid-career in corporate. I had roles such as CIO, CTO, and so forth. So I understood the tech environment fairly well. Um, and I think corporate became very compliance driven. It was more about the cool stuff was not there anymore. The innovation
Yeah.
wasn't there. And the reason why I got into tech was I think a little bit lost. And so as I then signed up for this master's program at the Graduate School of Business, uh, MPhil in inclusive innovation. And I didn't want to do an MBA, so I did that. And it just opened my mind again in terms of the innovation space, and a space that I really enjoy. And that gave me the confidence. I mean, when you're early 40s and that kind of stuff, you should take very calculated risks. I'm not in my 20s, so I'm not sleeping on a futon or anything like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, started my business in 20, registered in 2016, and started selling the solution by probably end of 2016, early 2017.
Amazing. I,
Mm,
I, I think research backs up what I'm saying, but I think 40-year-old founders make the best founders because you have a bit of network, you have enough life experience, you do take calculated risks because you're not at the
mm,
end of your career, but you also can't afford to bet the farm on every decision you make. And that
definitely.
combination, I just think, makes for really good entrepreneurs.
Mm,
So Jonathan, you mentioned innovation inclusion is a term you
mm.
just mentioned, something that you studied. Now, if I were to ask an American professor of technology what innovation inclusion means, they'll probably say an iPhone app that everybody can access. If you are someone in South Africa like yourself, this means something completely different. So, what does digital inclusion or innovation inclusion mean in a South African context?
So And thanks for asking that. So, having been in tech for many years prior to starting this business, all of the applications that we used to use in corporate was westernized application, Microsoft, all of those ones, and they designed in a setting that doesn't cater necessarily for this environment. So low data environments, resource constricted, restricted mobile devices, and so forth. And that's a huge part of the population as well. We're not talking dumb phones, but we're talking more just resource constrained environments. And it's innovation, not just for the sake of innovation, but to drive inclusivity and have an impact is ideal. And it's always thought of that inclusion as more like NGO kind of stuff and non-profit and digital inclusion. When people talk about digital inclusion, they think of putting up Wi-Fi networks in libraries and all of those kinds of things, right? So, and when I started, I took my learnings. Obviously, I did a thesis in digital inclusion, and I took those learnings into my business. And what we found very quickly is that WhatsApp was a bridge for businesses. So previously, it was hard sometimes for certain sectors of society, especially low-income sectors of society, to reach businesses and to transact with businesses. So when we built that bridge, immediately it unlocked a lot of revenue for business. And I think more and more companies have started seeing since then that building those bridges for their customers to reach them and to transact with them really is just good business.
And I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, WhatsApp recently, well, not that recently anymore, but they open up, to allow people to create these channels and create all kinds of great apps. Everywhere we go, we meet people now that are building very interesting things on WhatsApp. But I mean, Mixit really piloted this 15 years ago. And we had the use case. We saw it was working. Like Mixit really was building a bridge between people that didn't have a lot of money, but they could afford a little bit of airtime to be online, and people who had a lot of airtime, but still, these people can connect and engage with each other, and like business in the middle of that, engaging with each other. It was like, it's exactly what we're seeing now with WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Mixit was a little bit early, and you know what they say, sometimes it's not the best to be the first mover, because you come and you learn from the first mover's mistakes, and you can typically the second and third ones are typically more successful. So I think from that perspective, I think there's a lot of learnings from WeChat. WeChat was also WeChat in China, and WeChat specifically was also driving inclusion actually. So they leapfrogged the PC era, obviously large population. So they leapfrogged that PC era right onto mobile devices, which is very similar to Africa. And there was a good article that I read that I presented it a while back, where WeChat is considered infrastructure. And I'm almost at the point where I can say WhatsApp has become infrastructure as well, rather than just a fancy app and so forth. And the thing about WhatsApp as well is, why should you, 10 years ago or 15 years ago when apps first started, everyone wanted to obviously build an app and so forth. But I always say, if your app doesn't live on the first screen of a person's mobile device, then don't build an app. And the apps that live on the first screen of a person's mobile device, and what I term specifically the golden circle, or it's that section at the bottom where most of the finger activity goes. If your app doesn't live there and it doesn't have daily utility or at least weekly utility, then you shouldn't build an app. Because people will just delete it after a while. And that's where WhatsApp came and really filled that gap. And the other thing with WhatsApp that very few people realize is that it's just enough technology. It's just enough technology for a large portion of the population, where I don't need to know how a browser works. I don't need to know how a laptop works. I don't need to know how any of that stuff works. All I know is this is an app I use every day, and I can transact and engage with family, friends, businesses, and do whatever I need to get done.
And I think that's a very important point, because what WhatsApp does, and it really, the outcome of what it offers as a normal app that allows me to chat with someone else means that I would naturally go through the pain of understanding how it works. Now, we can easily sit in a context and say everybody knows how a chat app works. Well, if we go in Africa, like people get a smartphone for the very first time, they don't know how your app with your fancy UX and your design works. But the incentive of being able to connect and chat with your family and send voice notes and send pictures and send videos, all of those things, is high enough for them to learn how that app works. Now, if you build an app on that platform, they're going to know how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the appeal. That's why it's such a seamless channel. It's such an engaging channel. And even when Meta ChatGPT came out, and then Meta released Meta AI on WhatsApp. And so in my research actually that I was doing was that large portion of children struggle, for example, to do homework, right? Because they don't have access to the internet, they
Sure.
don't have access to Wikipedia and all of those kinds of stuff. And when Meta AI came, I thought, wow, now for the cost of 1 Rand, 2 Rand, 3 Rand, a WhatsApp bundle, you can basically sit at home, you have the entire internet at your disposal, and it democratizes access to the masses as well, which
Yeah.
I thought was just brilliant as well.
Yeah, and I can't agree more. And because the reality is, what I think AI is great at is, learning journeys for individuals, even for adults, never mind kids, they differ, right? Like if I try to understand a specific topic, there's a specific part of that I don't understand. So if I were to read a textbook or a document, it's like I don't really know what I don't understand because there was a part that I missed as I went along. AI is really great at helping me pinpoint that part and explain that part well. So I agree with you. I think Meta AI via WhatsApp, democratizing just the access to information and allowing people to learn at their own pace and in line with their own learning journey, I think it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just the last point, I think, just from a skills development perspective, we know we've got a problem in South Africa in terms of education and affordability of education. So you can sit at home and learn any kind of subject on how to do anything, right? There really shouldn't be any barrier. The challenge that I found through my research, though, 9 years ago, was that even though the resources are there, like Google was there that time and so forth, that still doesn't mean people are going to use it. So they use it for all kinds of activities, social activities, but they don't use it for economic activities necessarily.
Interesting. So you started the business eight and almost 9 years ago. And I mean, did you originally set out to build commerce solutions on WhatsApp? Was that the original plan?
Yeah, actually the name that I registered in 2016 is Masscom Interactive, which is interactive mass communication. So, and one of the first clients I pitched to, he still said to me, I only chat to my mom on WhatsApp, so I'm not sure if this is going to work for business. So the first year of my business was all about educating a market and creating a market. The good thing is there was a lot of pent-up demand. Everyone was waiting for it to come along, but we were certainly one of the first movers in the space.
Awesome. Now, I mean, one of the use cases that many business people get confronted with is like, a few years ago when you had to fly to Joburg, you had to download an app, and I never had the right app for the right airline. Back then, by the way, we actually had quite a few airlines. Now you have one or two. But you never had the right app, and then where's my boarding pass? And there was a big mission. And then Safair came out with a WhatsApp solution, which I believe was not only revolutionary in South Africa, it was like a global first, and it made so much sense because I want my boarding pass sent to me as I walk through the gate. Jonathan, you guys had something to do with that. Maybe share the story of how you got involved in working with them.
Yeah, it was actually, geez, this is one of those founder moments that it's quite a deciding factor whether you take the leap or you don't. So I was on a Safair flight on my way to Joburg, and I saw this person's face. I think the CEO is Elmar of Fly Safair. And as I got off Owatombo and I was going through I was walking down to the baggage carousel, I saw this guy and I thought, I've got a complaint actually because their flights are always very cold. So he was going up the escalator and I was going down to the baggage carousel. And as I'm as he's going up the escalator, I realized he's actually the CEO of Fly Safair. And so I pitched him while he was going up the escalator, and he said, "Look, just contact my office on Monday, and we'll talk." And that's how basically
But wait, Jonathan, wait. So what was that pitch that you said, hey, it would be great to get my boarding pass on WhatsApp. I can do that for you. What was the...
It was exactly that.
So you had this idea before that moment, or did the idea come to you in the moment?
It was a little bit before. I mean, it's 9 years back, but it was before. And I've flown Fly Safair a couple of times before and thinking, wow, this would actually be very nice. And I asked him, what are you guys doing on WhatsApp? And he said they were experimenting. But it was a very short conversation and a very short gap that I had in order to
talk about an elevator pitch. This is like an escalator pitch.
That was an escalator pitch. And years later, I mean, that was, if I didn't take the chance, right, as a founder, I mean, I wouldn't have had an awesome success story to tell. So that was very fortuitous.
And I think when it comes to building a business, like typically in a services business, especially, like, there's these step changes in the business. Like you land your first clients, typically not a big brand, maybe someone someone you convince to try it, very variant levels of success. But then at one point you get a brand that's recognizable, and that's almost a step change for the business, because now it's easier to get meetings with other people because other people have seen it. Like what did this mean for you as a business, working with them, having other people use it and actually start to understand like how WhatsApp can help their business?
Yeah, look, one of the biggest challenges for new startups is credibility, right? You don't have the customers, you have the product, you've got a small team, they've got no reason to believe in you. And so you really need to go and find that first customer that is going to give you some of that credibility in the market. I mean, we had other things that we were playing with and other smaller clients, but this really, because everyone was confronted with the technology as well. So they had a great experience, and it was good to just mention it, obviously, as and it really just did that job of adding credibility to to us as a business.
Yeah, and I think I actually want to go back because you said you had this, or you thought about the idea before you pitched it, and I think that's so important because when you're building a business and you immerse yourself in that which you're building, like, I mean, you walk around thinking about how this could solve specific problems and specific issues, right? And
that is still up to today, really. I am always on the lookout for.
I've got 100 WhatsApp ideas of how WhatsApp can do things for different people in different scenarios, and
I drive my team crazy because I am the ideas guy. So I'm always got like a gazillion ideas, and like, oh, hold on, we're still executing on the last
still
one.
building this thing. Yeah.
You're coming with the next one. So yeah.
I love that. So Jonathan, on the WhatsApp thing, what are some of the coolest things you've seen, either that you guys have built or that other people are building? Like where's the limits of this? We've seen the boarding pass, we've seen some transactional mails that are really cool, transactional messages that are really cool. It's just much more practical to get them over WhatsApp. But what other use cases have you seen that have really blown your mind?
Look, I mean, the chat interface was really funky for the longest time, and a bit, it wasn't quite an app experience. And as Meta obviously released more functionality within WhatsApp, more UI elements within WhatsApp, it became easier to input data. And I think where they're really going with things is to make to make this a form of WeChat where the customer lives, and brands can obviously transact with customers more effectively. If they and markets like India, Brazil, and these kinds of markets are ideal markets, and including Africa, for these kinds of things where commerce happens mostly on mobile, and the majority of the population are very mobile focused and mobile driven. And so the interactivity that comes within the platform itself from a UI perspective really makes the experience a lot more pleasant. There's a lot more sophisticated things that you can do within the platform itself, right? And I mean, like if you've played around with a prepaid 24 experience, it really will become a lot more interactive. We're looking at what else we can do there in terms of streamlining, obviously, making the customer spend as little time as possible within that experience just to get whatever they need to get done. But I always say to people, this is a rich media channel. So on the marketing side, we get a lot of people, they've traditionally sent out SMSs.
Yeah.
So they copy and paste this 160 character limit SMS and they paste it into WhatsApp. Then I'm like, you're totally losing the effectiveness of this channel.
Images
right?
Go crazy.
Right, exactly. I mean, it is interactive, there's full rich media, there's documents, there's everything in there. And I think that's what we bring across to our customers as well. With all of this going on, they understand their business, and it's our responsibility to show them what's possible with the technology, because this is our business, right? And that's what we like to do.
Great, I love that. Tell me, Meta as a platform, obviously the messaging part and the transacting part, or at least a large part of the transacting part, has now been established. Payments in China on WeChat, much easier, because it's kind of like a walled gardens contained, and they've sorted that out. I think for WhatsApp, having to roll that out on a global scale could be quite complex, because payments are different in every region. Do you think that's something that they're working towards, to be able to allow payments in-app globally in different countries? Or do you think that payments would always live outside of the app?
So I think it's all about, it depends on the various banking sectors. I think they've been going after the countries that's got UPI, that's a universal payments interchange. India has that, Brazil has that, and Singapore has that. And that's why those countries were the ones they went after first. So I was in India actually at the start of this year in January. And before that, I chatted to a friend of mine who is originally from India as well. And I asked him how he's using payments. And he says, well, I use Paytm. And he says, WhatsApp has kind of missed the bus already on that, because Paytm owns the market. So when I was there in January, there's Paytm everywhere. I saw some use cases on the buses and so forth that had WhatsApp payments, but not significantly so. I have to say I was only there for 2 weeks, and I was only in certain regions, but within the rural regions as well, Paytm was just everywhere. And so WhatsApp has got its work cut out for it in terms of penetrating and kicking out the incumbent over there. In Brazil, I'm not exactly sure how they're doing there from a payments perspective. We would love in South Africa to do that, but I don't see that happening soon. Just looking at our banking sector, and people have been trying to launch M-Pesa many times within South Africa, and it just couldn't get going.
That M-Pesa is in the startup graveyard here in South Africa.
Correct, right?
Probably one of those that have received the most funding and not been able to launch.
And not because it's not a great idea, and it won't be amazing. I mean, we've got PayShap now, so hopefully that'll fill the gap. But we are working on some things where we can get payments as native as possible. No one likes to break out of the WhatsApp experience, so we are working on something there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's almost like the last block in the puzzle here. I mean, if it's natively in the app, and if it's as simple as Apple Pay. I mean, Apple Pay has really made, and Google Pay obviously, but that made payments extremely simple, almost too simple. But I mean, I can imagine that that would kind of be a desired end game for Metas to be able to offer that, so that everything happens within the ecosystem, and that's a lot of data for them, and it's obviously some transactional revenue as well. But that data is worth quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure where they are. I mean, they're touching on a lot of different things. Obviously, AI is the new kid on the block, and
Yeah,
a lot of resources is going into AI. But the WhatsApp for Business ecosystem is maturing, which I'm very glad about. And from what I can see, I attend all the events and so forth. There's quite some sophisticated things. For example, voice calls on WhatsApp is now on the business API.
oh wow.
And so just like they've coming
Yes.
after SMS in South Africa,
Coming after
I
voice.
mean, they're coming after voice. And that's going to be quite the game changer. And
Okay.
personally, I would support WhatsApp voice just for this reason. I get so many spam calls on a
Yeah,
daily basis that I end up answering a lot of, or not answering a lot of legitimate calls
yeah,
because my phone just gets spammed. Even it seems like post Poppy, there's more spam calls now than before.
yeah.
And I think WhatsApp voice will bring, because they'll have a level of control in terms of that outbound breach to
Exactly.
protect their channel. A lot of that should fall away, hopefully. So
Yeah, it's just,
I'm
I
rooting
mean,
for it.
you register as an insurance company on there, and you say you want to outbound call people, and then I get a verified call from, insurance company X on WhatsApp, and I can decide whether or not I would like to answer that.
Correct. Or if your
Yeah,
frequency of calls have been exceeded by these types of companies, the
it's
same way
blocked
like
off.
they do with message, you get blocked off.
Yeah.
So I think I'm actually looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really good. And I think something that Meta might have not planned to the extent in building out WhatsApp, but something that I think is definitely going to happen. I mean, I've been using the agents on ChatGPT and just seeing them going on the internet browsing, and it's still early days. I mean, but
Mm.
I mean, you can prompt it and say, find me the cheapest flight from here to Hong Kong on that date, and it actually goes on multiple websites and comes back with offers and links. So one can imagine that chat input. I don't need a computer anymore to go and browse and find flights. I can ask an agent to do that. WhatsApp is perfectly positioned to capitalize on that, to just get I mean, I can even send it a voice note, right? And
Mm.
the agent can start running in the background and just give me a chat prompt back on what it found.
Absolutely. I think the use cases are going to be absolutely phenomenal. I'm definitely I'm very pro AI. Looking forward to some of these use cases. Even just in business, I mean, we're experimenting quite a bit with AI internally as well. And like the productivity gains is just amazing.
Yeah, no, it's scary. And exciting. And I think the very interestingly is just how it's going to change the user interface, and it all just points to chat interfaces, voice prompt interfaces. Like, it almost feels like websites and web apps are just going to disappear, and we're just going to, engage with prompts.
I think so too. I think the human machine interface paradigm is definitely changing in a very real way. It'll take some years to obviously to get mass adoption and stuff, but
Yeah,
certainly I think people should start experimenting now already with all kinds of interfaces. I'm certainly looking at that as well, what that means for our SaaS platforms
yeah,
and from an input perspective and just getting stuff done faster.
yeah. Love that. So, Jonathan, what most founders go through is they build a product. And any good product that's ever been built, the person behind that is probably a bit geeky about that product, and they love to tinker and tweak and add cool things, and they're like a person crafting something. But the problem is, that's not the only thing that makes a business. Like you need marketing and you need sales and you need income. What was the journey like for you, starting out building a product and then realizing, okay, I need to start building a business?
Yeah, I think, look, number one, I've always had this, you hear a lot about imposter syndrome and all of those kinds of things. And when I first started off, I never had ambitions to be a CEO and all of these kinds of things. I just wanted to build cool stuff. And it's what makes me come alive, right? It's why I started the business. It's why I got into tech in the first place. I want to build cool stuff. And as a founder initially, in the first couple of years, that was fun. And then obviously it's the admin and it's the HR and it's all of those kinds of things. And I've got this thing where I say not all CEOs are founders and not all founders are CEOs, right?
Yeah.
Or want to be CEOs. And I think especially within the whole startup sector, there's this thing by squeezing people into the CEO role too quickly. And it's a lot of responsibility. I like the freedom of having to build and ideate. And I think sometimes when the stresses of the business comes in, it's hard to think creatively. And it's not the first idea that starts the business that's the only one that's needed. Businesses go through innovations. The innovation declines after a few years, and you need to re-innovate constantly in order to stay ahead of the market. The problem with the techie mindset, which is one of mine as well, and you mentioned earlier at the start of the podcast that you haven't heard of Chat Inc. before. Well, branding is quite an important thing, but you find that out later on in your journey that actually you can do a lot by just building brand, right? And there's those things that you discover over time as well, that what really makes a business work. And all of those things, once you start them at the beginning, I mean, you see businesses that go from the first year to the third year with record volume and revenue and those kinds of things. And it's when you pull all those levers together that you can have that fast growth, and hopefully you can service that growth. But there's a lot of lessons that you learn along the way. But you also don't want to be too informed. You know, we're starting off your own venture. They said naivety is also a blessing, right? Because if you knew what was involved, you'd never start in the first place.
Listen, if naivety didn't exist, I think no one would start a business. So.
And especially in South Africa, I mean, the business environment in South Africa is quite a hard one for founders, right? We don't have all the perks that the American companies has, and so forth. There's very little perks in starting a business. I mean, I'm not going to go into SaaS and all of these kinds of things, but you know, it's even harder in South Africa to start a business.
And I think, you know, there's some things that a lot of people know when we talk about those things, you know, some of the red tape, some of the compliance issues, you know, just the level of taxation, there's a bunch of other things. But something that I thought about, which is not often spoken about, is like we've got really strong corporates, right? Like, so if you look at the companies on the JSE, our stock market's the best in Africa. Like, it's very stable. Like, we've got large companies that are very solid. And, you know, in an environment that isn't expansive environment, an economy that isn't busy growing rapidly, you know, you can find a lot of people are a bit more defensive as opposed to, yeah, let's make the pie bigger, right? And I think culturally it's become this thing where I think a lot of corporates are more defending than, you know, trying to keep the status quo, as opposed to going, let's work with a new startup and try something, or let's be happy about the potential competitor because it will grow the market. It's more like you've got these strong companies that are kind of just entrenched and trying to keep everything the status quo. And on the other side, you've got a difficult environment for small business to grow. And it's like, you know, between those two factors, it's really tough.
You mentioned something that really I usually get on my little soapbox for this one. But as South Africans, I mean, we all know we need to create jobs. We need to do all of these kinds of things. And when whatever radio station you listen on, it's about growing the economy. But I never hear the discussion going deeper than we need to grow the economy. Like, if you dissect the economy and what makes up an economy, it is, like, to a large degree, businesses, right? And I always say, like, we've got all of these obviously historical issues that we try to rectify through policy, but It's businesses that create wealth. It's businesses that create employment. And so your litmus test should not be to create jobs. It should be, we've created this year 2,000 new businesses.
Yeah.
And those businesses employ 20 people each or 10 people each and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I was in Spain about 3 weeks ago, and I was in a town called San Sebastian. So the population of San Sebastian is 186,000 people, and yet it is about 10 times the size of Cape Town, with shops everywhere and businesses everywhere. So when you look at the number of businesses per per person within there, you'd see that we really need to create a lot of businesses in South Africa in order to drive economic activity, because businesses buy from other businesses, right? And businesses create employment, businesses create wealth. I don't think wealth distribution as a concept necessarily works. You need to create new wealth, and you do that through creating entrepreneurship. And so even through our educational system, we need to stop creating employees and creating entrepreneurs as well, and showing them.
And handsomely incentivize entrepreneurs to take on the risk
Exactly.
and go for it.
I think there's a very, I mean, most of the time when you ask somebody, what you do, and they say you're an entrepreneur, it's like, oh, so you don't work.
Yeah, it's quite the opposite.
It's quite the opposite, right? And I think it's so misunderstood. Entrepreneurs can be a real role model in South Africa as well. And for children, it's something that they can achieve. And I think certainly we need to elevate the entrepreneur as a potential destination for school leavers. I mean, every year, 600,000 matriculate.
Yeah.
At the end of 4 years, what percentage do you think comes out at the end with a qualification? Very little, right? Very little. And so you're sitting with this compounding problem yearly of hundreds of thousands of matriculants with no tertiary education that needs to be absorbed into the job market. So you don't have the businesses to absorb them, and they think that their only employment option is either government or business, but you can create your own employment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's, philosophically, from a government perspective, like, there's two ways they can go about this. One is it's their job to look after the people, or the second one is it's their job to create an environment where people can look after themselves. And the second one, once you get it right, it's substantially better for growth, because you need much less red tape, you need much less complicated things. It's just create an environment where people create their own jobs. And the measurement, I think it's a vanity metric to say how many jobs that we create, because they can just hire more people in government, which I think a lot
which they do
trying to do. And bringing it back to what you guys are doing, Jonathan, you mentioned digital inclusion and building on platforms where people can access. That's really like creating an environment where people can engage, like an environment where they can help themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what Meta is also trying to do, especially in India. They're trying to create all of the tools for small businesses, and certainly lots of companies, or like in the informal sector, whether people are selling clothes, whether they're selling meat, whether they're selling anything, right? They're putting up their own little catalogs within WhatsApp, where you can check your orders and all of those kinds of things. So it's a little business in your pocket, right? That you can use and transact with. And I think actually the consumer section is probably way ahead of businesses in terms of transacting on WhatsApp.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, Jonathan, the platform that you guys have built, it's a marketing tech platform that big companies use to engage their customers, to send out marketing campaigns, all kinds of interesting things on WhatsApp. It's not a product that's only relevant to South Africa. I can imagine any country in the world where WhatsApp is has got a big market share, it makes sense for them to have a platform like this. How's the journey been, coming from being a South African company to now you have a platform that people overseas can engage with, and how's that been going, onboarding customers from abroad?
Yeah, look, I mean, building SaaS is is not easy, and it's not for everyone. And certainly we've learned our lesson, through building a product versus building a platform that you can easily on-ramp people. I think so far so good, and we've certainly seen amazing traction, from various markets, Brazil being one, Singapore. We are working on the UAE and those markets as well. We've got to streamline some of our UX and those kinds of things to reduce a lot of the friction within the platform, just to make onboarding a lot more seamless. What hasn't helped though is some of the meta rules in terms of onboarding businesses, which kind of creates a little bit more friction. But we managed to overcome a lot of that through some clever thinking, and so far we love the expansion that we're seeing internationally in terms of the platform. So besides outbound, it's also inbound. From
Yeah.
an inbound WhatsApp lead capture within the retail sectors.
Okay, and you have a presence in South Africa. Do you have a physical presence in other countries as well at this moment, or are you servicing all of them from South Africa?
We've got strategic partners
Okay.
because there's always a level of variability. The small businesses sign up online, but for larger enterprises that's interested, we've got strategic partners within those regions.
Okay, and the decision to go that route as opposed to getting your own people on the ground, like what was that decision based on?
Well, we haven't raised any round of funding. We still fully
wow.
self-funded. Yeah. So after 9 years, we're still fully self-funded. Just reinvested the revenue and so forth. So obviously that means you grow slower, and also you can't just put offices in every single region that you want to. That is coming. We'd have in our real table stakes regions. That's where we would have people on the ground.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think actually the beautiful thing is that sometimes if you don't have the money to do something like that, it ends up actually being the better decision. I've heard so many horror stories of people giving away so much of their equity to get money to go and expand in a different country, and that expansion just failing completely. So I think you're taking the right approach, irrespective of how you got there.
Thanks.
And what lies ahead for Chatting? You're building this SaaS platform, you're expanding internationally. Like, what are some of the things you're looking forward to?
So, we broadening our scope from just WhatsApp. We are busy with there's a couple of enabling technologies. Unfortunately, I can't mention it now on this, but you'll be sure to be the first to know once we release it. And we really think it's going to revolutionize some of both the WhatsApp space, but in the retail space as well. There's other channels which we're onboarding into the platform as well. And then there's a data play as well that we've got. So before you can market to customers, you need to validate that they are on WhatsApp, and we do that a lot of that for our customers to validate. So we've validated millions and millions of numbers already on WhatsApp to make sure that your meta rating remains high and you have a high quality rating as well. So there's a lot of things in terms of complementary products that we are busy with.
That is an interesting product, actually. Because it actually can end up being a standalone product for anybody that wants to use WhatsApp.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of things we're tinkering with and experimenting with. We're excited about WhatsApp groups that's coming.
Okay.
So I think that's also going to be one that we're really going to see some very interesting use cases with.
WhatsApp groups on the business API.
Correct.
Oh, I cannot wait. I run a community or two on WhatsApp, which is great because people are always on WhatsApp, but just having to manually manage everything is making me crazy.
Well, then you're one of the first on the top 3 list then for wanting to innovate. If there's something that you want to build on there
I'm
or
keen.
experiment with.
I'm keen.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
just let us know.
Awesome. Jonathan, it's been lovely having you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Rennie, for having me.